Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Ampro Engineering. In this episode, we're going to do a mechanical upgrade to the Bronco. As anybody who's been watching this channel has noticed, I've done a lot of cosmetic upgrades, like the entire interior kit that is in this particular Bronco. I was hoping to have the back windows in sooner, but unfortunately the Lexan that I purchased on eBay still hasn't shown up, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But what did come in is this. This is an MIP heavy-duty drive shaft kit for the Bronco. Now, I'm not too familiar with the existing drive shafts on this car, how good they are or how bad they are. These appear to be some sort of fiber-reinforced plastic, which may be acceptable, especially for the way I drive this truck. But the fact of the matter is, if MIP makes something, I have to have it. I'm a huge fan of MIP. In fact, my love for MIP goes back decades. This is my original MIP CVD set for my RC10, which I was given for one of my birthdays back in the day. This car's got thousands of miles, and these are completely original and have never been rebuilt, and I have never looked back since. All of my RC10s have the MID CVD kits, but lest we forget, MIP is also the one that gave us our ball differential for the Blackfoot, Monster Beetle, Frog, etc. So that is also another massive win for the community in my book. This has been just fantastic with the new differential. And let's not forget about the hot shot, but in this case here, we are going to focus on the Bronco. I know nothing about this kit other than the fact that I purchased it, so I guess we will take it out of the bag and see what we have. All right, so we have all the hardware and the components needed for this kit here. We do have our instruction sheet, and it's just noting that these are rebuildable drive lines, which is very, very nice. So you don't have to spend all this money on these drive shaft sets or even axles for other cars and have to replace the entire lot when they get worn out. They are rebuildable. Instructions are pretty straightforward. In fact, if you're familiar with really building any kind of axle, it's the same basic premise, except that this is made by MIP, so the quality is going to be second to none. The first things first, let's put the hubs together. So I'll begin this by grabbing one of these set screws right here. And I also recently picked up a set of MIP nut drivers and Allen drivers, and I'm absolutely thrilled that I finally have good tools. I do want to point out something very important. You'll see that the grease container it comes with says blue thread gel and MIP grease. Now ensure that you use the correct one because they are both kind of a shade of blue. The grease is the lighter blue and the thread lock gel is the darker blue. So just make sure you don't mix those up. So we'll use that blue thread locking gel here. Probably too much there. You don't want to put that much on it, but just enough to make it actually bite. I'll then take the coupling and install it just a bit. Now while I actually, helps if you install the right side. There we go. Install it there. While you've got this in your hand, take a little bit of the grease, just kind of dab it in there. You don't want to go nuts with this, because remember this is going to be exposed to dirt and grime. You just want enough to coat it. Take all that, pass it in through here, just like this. We'll probably have to put a little bit more on after the fact, but just get it coated. And then the fun part is lining this all up. And this is where you need that third hand. So I'll do it probably, there we go. Remember that your, oops, where's it? The flat right there is lined up so that the set screw will land on that face. Okay, and then go ahead and give this, tighten this up here a little bit. On second thought, just because of the extra grease that's kind of been squished out, I'm kind of the belief that I should have pushed the coupling in from the other side so that the excess grease would not have clogged up any, or would not have kind of interfered with the thread lock, which I don't think is going to be an issue, but maybe we should just push it in from this side instead to make things a little bit cleaner. But this is basically done now, so do that 3 more times. Okay, so this time I did push it in from the other side. You can see that the excess grease is on the non-screw side, which I think is a little bit tidier. So again, we'll snug that up. Okay, at this point you'll be left with all the pieces, and we can just put these together again. So there's our front, and here is our rear. So you can see that these two parts here are exactly the same. It's just the other couplers that are a bit longer. We're going to install these, but please bear in mind that the through hole here on this side and the through hole here on this side are at different heights. According to the instructions, you want to have it set up so you have no gap between the bearing in the axle housing and the hub. So we're going to focus on selecting the hole furthest from the edge. I'll have to pull the body off for that, and I'm sure for everybody else that's an easy task. For me, that does require a little bit more work since I do have the Traxxas light kit installed. Not to mention the Ampro interior set. But still, all this comes out pretty easily. And of course, I do have the servo attached for the steering wheel. And I have the light kit installed. So we'll just unplug both of those. Okay, our interior's out of the way. Cool, body's free. And now we can flip everything over and have access to our underside. I'll start with the front, and I'll take my Allen driver. We'll just unscrew that. Now these are shank style set screws, so you do have the set screw portion here, and then the rest of the shanks, we'll move that to the side. Same with this as well. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to install the MIPs, and in fact remove these, without any kind of disassembly. Oh, yeah, apparently you can. Okay, so that's pretty easy. Please make note of how these are installed. So the transfer case is here, and the axle is here. The reason why the shaft portion goes into the whole portion here is so that if there is liquid in this, it drains. If you reverse this, you'll have more susceptibility for liquid to actually pool in here, and that's a bad idea. So we'll take the MIP axle, again, line it up with that set screw hole just like that. I will take my MIP screw right here, and same as before, we'll get a little bit of that blue thread gel and install it just like that. Okay, that's done. Same for the front, and remember that we want to use the one further away, and that is this one here. Again, the center of this hole is further from this face than the center of this hole, so that's how you want to do it. And again, we'll line that in. Take one of these screw pins here, thread that in. Okay, and there's our front MIP drive shaft installed, and now I'll do the back. For the rear, it's going to be the exact same application. Remember to unscrew both of these pin screws. So we'll install the rear one right in there. Put the pin screw in until snug, and then stop. Remember to install your thread lock. Then the extension. So now we've got both of our front and rear MIP drive shafts installed. So there's the rear one, and there's our front one. So pretty straightforward. I did also want to note that it does come with a few extra pieces. You do have one standard M3 set screw, one M3 pin screw, and then you have one of these cross pins as well. So that's a nice little extra, so keep that with you. And that is it for that installation. I always like to install these live. Like, I didn't try and do this ahead of time because I find that any problems that I may have or any mistakes I may make may also be what some people would make. So I find it better to learn from my mistakes and in fact have others learn from them so that you don't have to make those same mistakes. Some things to note again are the colors of the blue thread gel and the MIP grease, them both being fairly blue, so don't mix those two up. And to remember to put grease on that coupling and then push it in from the set screw side forward so that the additional grease is on the back side and not on the set screw side. These probably would fare for some grease on the actual ball as well, but I'm going to be driving this in some sandy area pretty soon, and I'm concerned that that grease might attract some sand, and I think that it's probably a little bit safer this way for my application. But if you're going to be driving in some kind of a wet application, you probably would want to have a little more of that grease. I'm also not going to put grease on this spline assembly here. In the past, I found that that's a problem. Now, you may disagree, and that's perfectly fine, but for your application. But for mine, I've always found that greasing this tends to be a problem. So keep that in mind, and you're going to want to set this up for your application, not mine. So there's a couple more upgrades I'm going to do to this truck. We have some new bumpers being designed. I did install my turbine wheels on this that do leverage the Traxxas center hubcap, which is very, very nice. And then I've got to replace the servo with something that is a little bit higher end than this one here. I've not had any issues with this servo, but I've heard that they're problematic, and I don't want to take that risk. So please stay tuned. I've got a lot of new stuff for this truck, as well as for a couple other vehicles that are Tamiya's and non-Tamiya's, so that'll all be good fun. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.